We're shooting this just before the Easter weekend comes into play, which signals the end of the first quarter. First quarter of 2024 is already done. Some of you may be planning to utilize the long weekend to go away. Some of you may be seeing this as a celebration of Christ. Others may be preparing for an Easter egg hunt. And there may be some of you that are looking for something which isn't an egg, but you're following Twitter to see where Diddy is at. It's pretty significant when we see where we want to go today for a figure such as this man, and how for someone like myself being 40 and seeing how he's dominated media for so many years, and the positioning of what was actually going on behind the scenes. And increasingly, as we are in this age that we're living through, where it's very hard to determine what is accurate and what is credible, the message for you in terms of how you can live higher is ensuring the credibility of information that you receive and that you consume. And this is something that we have listened. This is something that you would have heard me talk about on this podcast before. And at this time of year, there is a need to reinforce that message. And one of the biggest things that we're going to use a segue that brings all this to surface in no better light, particularly when we've got to focus on your health. And that's going to trickle us down to a position where it's more applicable to you if you're interested in cannabis, either as a wellness product or if you're integrating this into your healthcare. And that little segue is around an article that has been doing the rounds. Now, I'm saying it's an article rather than research. If you have a look at how it's being presented, people are saying it's research, but clearly, if you actually read through what they have done, this is not peer reviewed. This is not a randomized clinical trial. This is a paper that has been put forward, and a lot of people have jumped up and down and tried to utilize it as clickbait to come in and use it as a scare campaign, I think. Right. And what we're talking about, as you've seen, the American Heart Association, the AHA have come out and supported it, which shows that time-restricted eating or fasting, so say type of fasting, intermittent fasting, where you would not eat for a 16-hour period, they're saying that there's a 91% chance higher risk of cardiovascular death. Now, this isn't a low number. This is 91%. It's got the endorsements of the American Heart Association, as was indicated just then. And then you've seen it's been doing the rounds on all media outlets, but it isn't credible information. It's been proven, and they showed the limitations in the study itself. And whether or not this area of fasting has any relevance to your life at all, this is a clear example of mixed messages being provided to you and spoken as truth, but clearly with huge gaps. Now, just to say, as you can probably see how I'm delivering the message today, probably not on point as I need to be. And I'm throwing my hand up there and saying that. And one of the reasons I'm in the middle of a fast at the moment, I haven't eaten for around 24 hours, and I'll be doing a 3-day fast, so that's 72 hours. I do this quarterly, and I have done this since 2016. I swear by these. You don't need to listen to me. I'm just sharing with you, and you'll see many, many people who utilize fasting as a mechanism to be able to support their health. Now, the reasons why you would have someone like an organization like the American Heart Association get behind this when there's clearly limited data. Well, clearly you can just have a look at the influence of what has occurred in terms of the food pyramid that we grew up with, a link back to everything that we knew around tobacco and cigarettes, and all the campaigns that were provided to us back in the day or prior to some of our days around that. And then more recently, which has been going on for a long period of time, the continual campaign against cannabis and the stigma that continues to be present to this day. You need to get reliable sources to get your information, and that that requires some work on your end to be able to make this more relevant if you are part of our audience that enjoys cannabis or you are interested in cannabis, and that idea of credibility. It's always around what is the message or what is behind the reason for one pushing or not pushing certain information. And if we want to have a look in Australia, I've spoken about this before, and we can continuously the beating on the drum of the adult rec market, right? And where people want to get with that. And you've seen some of my comments on that, and whether or not we get to that stage or not. You know, we've seen information come out this week which says Australia is the ideal model to support access across the world, and we've got a medical model. Whether or not we're going to be moving ahead with that, there's a lot of whispers in the industry, but basically we know that behind certain articles and certain pushes are vested interests that want you to consume information so you think that's the right way. That's an example in Australia. In America, think about all the individuals at the moment that are talking about scheduling. Oh, I know what's going to happen, and it's this date for scheduling and what it means. No one really knows, right? You have the best people in the industry, and if you hear what they're saying, there's still a process that needs to be followed. But people are trying to fill up content on podcasts. People are trying to stay relevant on X. People are trying to get your attention on TikTok and IG. And they're trying to do that to be able to go, come and listen to me, come and listen to me, come and listen to me, because we know it is an economy of attention that people are trying to capture your attention and bring you in so they can probably sell you something at a later stage. That is what everyone is doing, trying to capture your attention. So they're just filling it up with positioning to support their agenda. One of the things that we see is a lack of the industry talking about homegrown. So if you're in Australia, right, and we're going to get to how do you know what actual quality buds look like? What, you know, and people will be like, oh, don't talk about buds. How would you know what quality flower is, right? But before we get there, let's go back. Why isn't there a bigger push for homegrown as it probably needs to be from the industry? Well, of course not, because people see that as a threat. Individuals see that as a threat to the bottom line. So a push for homegrown isn't going to be there. That said, we do see a bill that's been put forward by the legalized cannabis party. There's things that I think we would like to get into and probably debate that from either side to unpack that. Again, because you just don't want to see things and be like, oh, just because they're saying it, I'm going to get behind it, right? This kind of requires work on your side. At times, the bill may be there and you'd be like, oh, great. And the leaflet says that. But is that always the case? Are there things within inside it which actually go against what you think is actually accurate? Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but it's again up for you to do some digging into that, right? So the other thing around agendas, as mentioned before, we know the stigma that has occurred for decades around cannabis. And that has resulted in where we are today, right? So if we want to have a look at that question, how do you know what quality is? Some of you out there know much more than doctors. Some of you out there know more than anyone. And whether or not your voices are actually being included and at the table, I'm talking about you legacy people. I'm talking about you people that have been growing. I'm talking about you people that know the plant. And I'm very fortunate at this stage that I don't know it all. I've got such a long way to go. And I'm just lucky I've got a whole heap of people around me, which I consider good friends and also mentors, that continuously to this day support my understanding of this plant, which is extremely complex, even though someone like myself that's been dedicating years to understanding it as a result of what occurred for me with my life-changing experiences when I was a cancer patient. I'm like 8 years down the road and I'm still learning on a monthly, weekly basis. And I got to shout out Mark, Chris, and Kurt for their different support and friendship that they're giving me around this plant and around the implications, around access, around regulations, around product enhancements, around product innovation. And so if I'm in that situation where I'm virtually a student of this plant and I'm still growing, still learning to this day continuously, then the question of what does good quality mean? What does good quality mean to you? Because we only need to go back around 5 years, right? Only around 5 years. And all we had, and go back 15, 20 when I was growing up, all you had was it indoor or outdoor? That's basically it. Sometimes you'd get and it was full of seeds, and that was just like, hey, this is really good. We got a good batch. It's not good batches, but you don't know what that is, right? No concept, no idea about, oh, wow, this is actually what good herb can look like. This is actually what good medicine can look like. And I've just got this at the moment, right? And I've got a sample, right? So we did a real world data study. And while this may not be reflective of the entire industry, if we put a margin of error of say 15 to 20% around that, I think it captures it fairly well. And I know there's some wide ranges there, but it's just to be transparent. I'm not saying this is fact, but we did a study, and within that study, 73% of individuals had utilized cannabis as a medicine for under 24 months. So less than 2 years. So if you've got less than 2 years that you've been taking this as a medicine, how well can you actually detect this is what good quality is, right? So that question goes out for you. Now, there's ways that you can get better at that, because sometimes you'd be like, oh, it's Australia, it's coming through a doctor. My doctor must be educated and I must be getting good quality. Have you seen everything that's been going on around Canadian companies that are dumping trash into the Australian market, and the quality of some of the cannabis that is being shared online? If so, is that what you're having, but you're telling your friends and raving to everyone, like, look at what I'm getting? You know, we did as I said, one of my mentors and one of my dear friends, we did some comparisons live the other day, and we started looking at different products, and we started looking at what he had bought by a pharmacy, from a doctor, and looking at the quality of that untouched. And just saying that is like the standard of where we are now. That isn't entirely reflective of everything, and I'm not trying to say it is. Yeah? I'm not saying that at all. But the question is, how do you know what good quality is, and where are you getting that information from? That is the question for you, particularly being mindful of how we got to this point today. Oh, I saw it in this article. I saw it from this publication. It was endorsed by, like, why was it endorsed? Why was it prescribed when we looked at kickbacks the other day? Is this the best quality that is for you? Like, we see that things are going to start unraveling in the industry, and it's up for you to be your own advocate. Now, there's things like those kind of reviews that you can then go and learn from the lessons of someone that's been involved in the Canadian scene, then come out to Australia as a patient, and you can have a look at the different reviews that she puts forward. And that can be a source. You can tap into different Reddit channels. You can tap into different clubs. You can have a network of people that you build around you. You can have really good doctors. You can have great professionals around you. You can listen to content like this and you can follow on. But you need to be your own advocate to really know what is the best quality and what is the best product for your body. Because we're in an age where everything is bought. And if everything is bought, what can you trust? Big messages for you this week, but we always keep it real on this podcast, because it's up for you to be able to determine what is best to support you, because no one's coming to save you. Don't mean to be so cynical as we approach Easter weekend, but it's just a simple message about think and be mindful of the hidden messages and the money that is behind your consumption, the messaging that you receive everywhere. We are independent. We have always been independent, and we are OnTracka. Happy Easter.